Well, keeping torture alive. A bill in the Senate is calling for a return to Bush-era torture. A freshman lawmaker introduced the amendment, which would undo President Obama's executive order banning torture as an interrogation technique. That amendment also aims to bring back a, quote, classified set of torture tactics. So this would deem certain forms of torture as allowed, but the public isn't allowed to know what they are. So why is Congress so gung-ho about torturing tactics? Former Reagan administration official and columnist Paul Craig Roberts joins us now. Welcome, Paul. Why are we seeing this renewed push for harsh interrogation practices?
Well, if you're talking about the detainee policy that's in the Defense Authorization Bill, which allows the U.S. military to pick up people in every country of the world, which includes China and Russia and the United States, and hold them indefinitely, then we're talking about something that's far greater than a torture policy. We're talking about the repeal of the United States Constitution. And what we see from the vote against the amendment by Rand Paul, the Republican senator from Kentucky, to exempt American citizens from this amendment to the Defense Authorization Bill that would allow the military to simply pick up any American citizen anywhere on earth and hold them indefinitely without charges. What we see is that Rand Paul's amendment got voted down by the U.S. Senate. So we have the U.S. Senate consisting of all except 2 Republicans plus 15 Democrats voting to repeal the United States Constitution.
Now, there is some question as to whether these harsh interrogation tactics are also constitutional. For example, waterboarding, that was once torture, now it's considered not torture, or they're trying to bring it back. It's like the definition of this is unclear. And now there's this classified list which would make it so Americans don't even know what forms of torture are allowed. Why is there this push to allow the U.S. to engage in torture?
Well, I don't know why we're focused merely on torture, since we're talking about this detainee policy. The United States government executed Japanese following World War II for waterboarding people. So the position of the United States government is that waterboarding is torture. We've actually executed people for doing it. So I don't see how they can ever say that it's not torture. But what we're up against is more than the lawlessness of the United States government in violating American statutory laws against torture, which are on the books, and against violating the Geneva Conventions. But what we're talking about is an amendment to the Defense Authorization Bill, which permits the United States government to use the military in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which has been in place since 1876, and to use the military to arrest American citizens and hold them in indefinite detention with no recourse to courts of law. Now, this constitutes the repeal of the United States Constitution. And when you find that we have 60 members of the elected Congress who have supported this, then what we see is the United States is on its way to being a police state. Only 2 Republicans in the Senate voted against this amendment. Only 2. So what do we know? We now have a Republican Party that is a Gestapo party. It is in favor of the United States military arresting American citizens and putting them in concentration camps. And that's what's happening right now before us, in front of our eyes.
And so what does this have to say about the climate in Congress and the climate in politics? And if it continues on this track, what America could end up looking like?
Well, Obama says he's going to veto this. And according to the Washington Monthly, which is a very long-standing Washington publication, the Senate voted this way. All but 2 Republicans plus 15 Democrats. They all voted to give this power to the military, despite the fact that the White House, the Pentagon, the FBI, the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, and the head of the Justice Department's National Security Division all told the Senate, don't vote for this. It's a very bad idea. And yet they did. And so the question really comes to, who wrote this amendment? You see, they stuck it on the defense authorization bill because they assume that most senators don't want to vote against national defense. But who wrote this amendment? What is the purpose of it? What is the agenda? This is the question that's unanswered. What is the reason for this amendment?
And, well, you know, some arguments, proponents of this amendment say that this is all in the name of safety. Does the U.S. need to go this route in order to stay safe from terrorist threats?
Look, what terrorist threats are they talking about? Since September 11th, 2001, more than a decade ago, there have been no terrorist incidents in the United States except those orchestrated by the FBI. There are no terrorist instances. Despite the effort of Washington to create terrorism by bombing a half a dozen Muslim countries, we're still completely safe. Homeland Security hasn't caught a single terrorist. There's no terrorist activity in the United States. Therefore, there's no basis for this type of a response. There's some other agenda going. And I think what it is to shut down the critics of government, because the critics of government are
Paul,
now
I'm sorry, we're running out of time there. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. That was former Reagan administration official and columnist Paul Craig Roberts.